Okay, greetings everyone. This is Ehav Ever from the Chronicles of Ehav Ever, and today I'm going to be doing another video, short one hopefully, that deals with a topic that I've kind of, I guess, touched on a little bit in the past, and it's actually a topic that caused me to start doing the videos the way that I've been doing them lately, where I'm actually showing you source material rather than just simply talking about it. And the topic I want to talk about today is intellectual dishonesty. Now, why does that come up? It seems that I've been in a number of forum settings, mostly when it comes to people who only know like one language, and usually that language they know is English, for example. Um, and it's specifically not because they're speaking English and not because they're from the West. In some cases, it's just people who believe a certain have a certain religious practice. And I'll just have to be honest. Most of the time, that practice seems to be certain types of Christians who, um, in some cases, have either been taught or practiced what I would call certain levels of intellectual dishonesty. And I see this mainly in areas of when it comes to language, specifically the language of ancient Jewish text. So let me kind of express what I mean in the following way, and I'll do a share screen here to hopefully show you what I'm talking about. So let's start here. This text here, I think people who know anything about the world and languages would look at this and say, okay, that's Chinese. It's some form of Asian language. This text is something I just kind of found earlier today. Essentially, what it is, it's a medical text from China. Now, I'm gonna be intellectually honest with you, 100%. I don't understand anything what's written here. I have no idea what's on this in this book. There was a time when I was a kid that, for example, I did learn a little bit of Japanese, but Japanese is obviously not Chinese. And even the Japanese I learned was mostly in speaking, and it wasn't like to where I could read something. I mean, I only recognize a couple of symbols. Like in 2006 was the last time I ever used it. But again, to be intellectually honest with you, I would never sit down and try to tell you something about a text that I personally can't read in the original language it's in. So the only people who I would say are reliable sources of information about this text are people who A, can read it, people who B, can understand it, and then C, people who actually can give a context for what's being talked about in it and give a rational explanation of the information in it based upon understanding the cultural context and things like that. Further, someone who has all those tools and understands medicine would be way better in terms of being able to give a practical breakdown of what's in this text. Me personally, I'm not a reliable source of information about the Chinese language. I'm not a reliable source of information about this book. I'm not a reliable source of information about medicine. So a person would kind of be foolish to listen to me on things like that because that's not my expertise. Um, and even in areas where something is my expertise, you should research it and take everything with a grain of salt and do your own research. So let's take that into account first and foremost. And again, that's me being intellectually honest with anyone who's listening to this video. So as an example, one of the things I sometimes run into is you'll have someone who, let's say, I've met Christians who have a certain particular view of things, and they'll say something about a Hebrew word, for example, just one Hebrew word that they may think that they understand, and they'll go exclusively and say, this is 100% what this word means. And just recently I did this where I was in a forum where someone brought up, what the word alma means or almo in Hebrew means, and I try to kind of like lead into like not like jumping on them and saying you don't know what you're talking about, just kind of say like, okay, that's interesting what you believe. Where did you get that from? Where do you get the definition of this word? And for those who don't know, what we're looking at now is a section of the Torah, and this is the word in question here, almo. This text here is ho almo. So the thing that's interesting about this is that there's a certain Christian belief that is, I mean, let's be quite honest with you, it comes directly from the New Testament. It doesn't come from the Hebrew text, it doesn't come from what this word means, it just comes from what they want to believe about it. Um, that they believe this word means virgin, means a virgin young girl. Now, what's interesting about it is that this is a feminine word, meaning that this is a word, alma, being used to describe a young girl. And in the Hebrew Torah, it's very clear that alma means young girl. Now, the interesting thing is that the masculine form of the word, elim, means like a young boy, a young man, or a young person, for example, but a young male. Now, the funny thing is, if the word alma here means a young virgin, for example, and exclusively means a virgin, then elim would mean a young male virgin. And the funny thing is, you don't find any Hebrew text where that word is ever used in that way. And even alma here is not used in that way. But what made this kind of especially funny is that when you go a little bit further in the text prior to this, and again, I'm not going to get into detail where in the Torah this is, because I think, again, I think people can pretty much find certain things on their own. But there's a section of the text where a word in Hebrew that specifically does mean, like virgin, for example, which is batula, and that's actually this word right here is used. And when I was asking this person, okay, this person who said, okay, alma means virgin, I was like, okay, well, does it mean virgin all the time? And does the male form of the word mean virgin? They would never answer that. Then when I said, okay, well, there's a word in Hebrew called batula, what does that word mean? And they took a long time before they answered it. And the funny thing was, they went to Wikipedia, like I think Wiktionary or something like that, to try to define it. Which, if you're going to Wikipedia to try to explain something in a language, that kind of means you don't know the language. I mean, there's other sources that reliable people go to, and Wikipedia is not it. I mean, Wikipedia is a good start, but if you already know the language, you don't go to Wikipedia to define something. So this word here, batula, everybody agrees that this means virgin. And one of the ways you know it is right after this word here, it says, batula wa ish lo yada'ah. Now that ish wa ish lo yada'ah means that a man did not know her, meaning that he did not have any relationships with her. So the text itself is clear that this word means a virgin, but the other word alma doesn't mean virgin, and there's no indication anywhere that it does. And if you read the context of what's being mentioned, you'll see why the two different words are used in two different situations. So, getting back to the topic of intellectual dishonesty, this person, when I was trying to lead them down this path of trying to see that they don't understand the Hebrew language, they don't give like these clear answers. And I find this sometimes with people who get into this level of intellectual dishonesty, where they won't come out and say, "Look, I may believe this thing about this word, but I don't understand the language we're talking about. I just this is what I believe about it." And you ask, "Okay, well, where did you get that from?" "Okay, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Blah blah blah." That is what I find interesting. And the thing is, I find it interesting in the damn time we live in, because we live in a time where there's the internet. There's ways of checking things, just like the person used Wiktionary to try to find something, but they didn't look in Wikipedia, which specifically has an article about the word alma and how it doesn't mean virgin, for example, where the word batula does. So I just wanted to do a quick thing about intellectual dishonesty, because you find it not just in what I'm saying, but religious texts. You also find it sometimes, even like, for example, just science. You find it sometimes with people being on both sides, of people who are against certain things in science or for it, have certain levels of intellectual dishonesty. And I think part of it just comes from people wanting to win. If I say to myself, okay, this discussion I'm involved in, or this argument involved in, I just want to win. No matter what the cost, I want to win. I'm out to prove that I'm right and everybody else is wrong just because I say so. That also increases certain levels of intellectual dishonesty. So that's one of the things I was taught as a kid, that one of the things you have to do is look up something for yourself. Don't just trust it because someone wrote it. That the Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, says that people have been writing books for thousands of years. That doesn't make something right just because it's written in a book. By like tokens, if it's in a book, doesn't mean it's wrong. It just simply means that you're going to have to investigate to determine what exactly is the truth. And that's the appropriate action to take. So I just wanted to do a quick video because I just had to get that out there about that. And, especially in the area of videos that I do, I think it's important for me to be honest about that also, about the fact that, there could be anything I could say that could be wrong if proven wrong. There's also things that I could easily say by mistake that, would have to be corrected if by mistake. So I think that's one of the most utmost important things that for me is very important, to try to do my best to be intellectually honest as much as I can, and to make corrections in areas where I may be fall victim to being intellectually dishonest. And my hope is that by providing the information I do in the videos, that I can also help other people be able to see through the people who are being intellectually dishonest, so they themselves don't fall for those tricks. So again, this is Ehav Ever from the Chronicles of Ehav Ever, and I just wanted to do this short video about intellectual honesty and dishonesty, and I hope it helps out. Take care.